Hello, Applebee, and welcome to our celebration of Black History Month. Let's start this off with a talk about the Sankofa bird. The Sankofa bird is an African symbol from the Akan tribe of Ghana, and it symbolizes the Akan people's quest for knowledge, a quest that requires a critical lens, an open heart, and a patient mind. This mythical bird has its feet planted facing firmly forward, and its head is turned backwards, and the beak of the bird is picking an egg up and off of its back. And this symbolizes taking the good from the past and bringing it into the present and the future in order to make empowering progress through benevolent and mindful use of knowledge. You must reach back to reclaim what is lost in order to move forward. We want to center our Black history celebration on Black joy and Black excellence. Not because we want to forget about the past or be ignorant of the past or forget about the violations of equity that have been perpetuated against our ancestors and ourselves. We will still remain informed, but we'll use that information to propel ourselves into a well-informed future. We want to use this week to take part in that reclamation of the Black narrative that for so many years has been out of our control and been complicit in perpetuating the harmful stereotypes against Black folks everywhere. We choose to celebrate Black joy and Black excellence, and this choice is an act of rebellion. This choice is a political act. It is an act of resistance and empowerment.
First, we want to acknowledge the history of Black and Indigenous peoples on this land. Black and Indigenous peoples contributed greatly to the success of North America at the expense of their own cultures, livelihoods, and homes. The two groups are thus tied together by the effects of colonization, Black people being removed from their homes to be used as free labor, and Indigenous peoples being removed from their home for land and forced to assimilate or lose their lives. The erasure of the brutality of slavery and the genocide of the Indigenous peoples contribute greatly to the present-day injustices faced by both groups. The misunderstanding of the intergenerational trauma faced by both groups allows for the struggles of these groups to go unprioritized and unheard. The current systems, laws, and powers are not failing these groups. They are working exactly as they were intended to. There will be no change until people examine and remove their entitlement to stolen land and the forced labor of others. With this land acknowledgement also comes a commitment to centering Indigenous voices and recognizing that we in this school have benefited from this land. Not only must we recognize this, but we must also commit to fulfilling the 94 calls to actions released by the Truth and Reconciliation Council as we become leaders, entrepreneurs, and workers of tomorrow. We at Applebee College acknowledge that these lands on the shores of Lake Ontario are steeped in Indigenous history. For thousands of years, it has been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Anishinaabe people. Most recently, it has been a part of the Treaty of the Lands and Treaty of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nations. We acknowledge and thank the Mississaugas of the First Credit Nation for being stewards of the traditional territory.
We recognize the excellence and joy of Audre Lorde. She described herself as a Black, lesbian, mother, warrior, and poet. A creative and an activist, she dedicated her life to using her art to express the injustices she faced. Her works explore racism, sexism, classism, and homophobia, and remain a powerful tool for the empowerment of Black women today. She was born in New York in 1934 and struggled with speech development. Growing up to two immigrant parents during the Great Depression shaped her experiences and understanding of the world. She found her voice through writing poetry, which she excelled at from a young age. She was also featured in numerous magazines at the time, such as the ever-famous 17 magazine. She played a role in shaping feminism, highlighting that at the time, feminism did not consider the experiences of women of color and queer women, and used her voice to help people understand the concept of intersectionality. She fought a 14-year battle with breast cancer, eventually losing her life. However, her prose till this day inspires Black women. To highlight her excellence with poetry and writing, here is a quote to show the importance of Black joy. Caring for myself is not self-indulgence. It is self-preservation, and that is an act of political warfare. This quote conveys an important message to Black people as a whole, that within an oppressive and tiring landscape, you are worthy of care, meaning you are worth it. Within a society that has sought to create sameness, it is important to uphold diversity and uphold voices by taking care of oneself.
Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening sky. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us.
A poem on Black Excellence by Dr. Levine Jackson Harvey. Black excellence defines us. In spite of injustices, racism, slavery, and the attempt to dehumanize a race of people, we are still standing tall. Despite attempts in the past to not educate our ancestors, to threaten those who dared to make a difference. In spite of shackles, we rose over the hill to see our future, to see the light, to see freedom. As a people, we are strong, beautiful, Black, proud, and achievers. We have made great contributions to this country, to this society, and all over the world. We must continue to stand tall, to strengthen others so they do not fall into the trap of not believing in themselves, not loving themselves, not embracing their God-given gifts. We must propel them to dream. We must educate them on our magnificent history and our long list of accomplishments in all areas of academia. Black excellence recognizes the brilliance, the grit, the growth, achievements, and the strength of a strong, resilient, and proud people.
We recognize the joy and excellence of Viola Desmond, a Canadian businesswoman, civil libertarian, and the first Canadian woman to be featured on a regular $10 bill. On November 8, 1946, Viola Desmond decided to spend her evening and join a movie at the Roseland Theatre in New Glasgow, Nova Scotia. She bought a ticket and took a seat in the main floor of the theatre, but was followed by the ticket seller, who approached her and told her that she could not sit on the main floor. The theater segregation rules stated that these seats were for whites only. Desmond saw this as unjust and refused to give up her seat, but was physically dragged out of the theater by police officers and arrested. She did not, however, accept the charges and took the case to Nova Scotia's Supreme Court. Though she eventually lost the appeal for a conviction, her fight against injustice did not go unnoticed by Nova Scotia's Black community, and she remains an important figure in Canada's civil rights history. Desmond dreamed of opening a beauty salon, but Nova Scotia beauty schools did not accept Black students. Instead, she trained as a hairdresser and beautician in Montreal and the US, and eventually became a successful entrepreneur, operating her own beauty school and salon in Nova Scotia. Desmond was described as ahead of her time and remains a figure of Black excellence.
Don't limit your imagination. An excerpt from Think and Grow Rich, A Black Choice by Dennis Kimbrough and Napoleon Hill. A look at America's first Black female astronaut illustrates the importance of creative vision. As a child, Mae Jemison wanted it all. She dreamed of a career in medicine and engineering. She was reared in a family that stressed the notion of why not. She gazed at the sky and envisioned a life amongst the stars. With an unlimited imagination, she shared her dreams to anyone who would listen. Over the years, young May's goals crystallized. After graduating high school, May went to Stanford University. As an accomplished dancer, she produced, directed, and choreographed dance and theater ensembles in her spare time. In 1977, May graduated from Stanford and immediately applied to medical school. Cornell University made its pitch and she was sold. Here she gained national exposure by presiding over the medical school student council, and she was drawn to even more opportunities. May finished medical school with impressive credentials and enlisted in the Peace Corps. By 1990, May applied to the NASA shuttle program. Dreams do come true, she thought, as the selection process commenced. Then she waited. Nearly 20 years from the moment she dared to gaze into the sky and let her imagination roam free. She was about to make history. She hit her mark after being selected from a pool of 2,000 applicants. Dr. Mae Jemison was bound for outer space. People cannot let others limit their imagination. Otherwise, we would never make discoveries or advance. This is a brilliant example of creative imagination at its best.
My People, a poem by Langston Hughes. Dream singers, dancers, storytellers, loudmouth laughers in the hands of fate, my people. Dishwashers, elevator boys, ladies' maids, crap shooters, cooks, dancers, jazzers, waiters, writers, nurses of babies, loaders of ships, porters, hairdressers, comedians at vaudeville, and bandmen in circuses, dancers and singers, all. Storytellers, all. Singers, gosh, what singers. And dancers, gosh, what dancers. Dancers and singers, singers and laughers. Laughers? Yes. Laughers, laughers, laughers. Loudmouth laughing in the hands of fate.
Thank you all so much for taking the time to listen to the voices of the Black community at Appleby College and learn more about Black history. To conclude, I'd like to explain more about Black joy and what it means with an excerpt from the article What Black Joy Means and Why It's More Important Than Ever by Shante Joseph. Black joy is vital. The punitive treatment of Black folks during the Black Lives Matter protests was symbolic of our nation's history of controlling Black bodies. Control of Black bodies has always been a political matter. American feminist historian Stephanie M.H. Camp writes, just as exploitation, containment, and punishment of the body were political acts, so too was the enjoyment of the body. Though this was written about slavery in the 1800s, the idea that unrestricted joy and freedom expressed by Black people is inherently rebellious still rings true today. We can actively trace the spatial and temporal control of Black expression from slavery and colonialism through to today. This is why the act of joy is resistance, and as we use our physical bodies to protest, march, and demand change, we must also use them to express joy. For Black folks, joy and resistance are one and the same. Joy, much of history has been spent trying to take it away from us. To resist the omnipresent, intrusive, and pervasive nature of white supremacy, we must also allow ourselves to be rebelliously joyous. Being able to experience and share joy is especially needed online where there's no respite on social media. Our social feed is constantly inundated with inhumane acts of violence towards Black people and disregard for Black life. The constant access to trauma lives inside of us and manifests in ways that are not always easy to spot, slowly etching away at our peace. A quote from Cleaver Cruz states, "Amplifying Black joy is not about dismissing or creating an alternative Black narrative that ignores the realities of our collective pain. Rather, it's about holding the pain and injustices we experience as Black folks around the world in tension with the joy we experience in pain's midst. It's about using that joy as an entry into understanding the oppressive forces we navigate through as a means to imagine and create a world free of them." You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies, You may trod me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I rise.
Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? 'Cause I walk like I got oil wells pumping in my living room?
Just like moons and like suns, with the certainty of tides, just like hopes springing high, still I'll rise.
Did you want to see me broken? Bowed head and lowered eyes? Shoulders swollen down like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries.
Does my haughtiness offend you? Don't you take it awful hard 'cause I laugh like I've got gold mines digging in my own backyard?
You may shoot me with your words, you may cut me with your eyes, you may kill me with your hatefulness, but still, like air, I'll rise.
Does my sexiness upset you? Does it come as a surprise that I dance like I've got diamonds at the meeting of my thighs? Out of the hut of history shame, I rise. Up from the past that's rooted in pain, I rise. I'm a black ocean, leaping and wide, welling and swelling, I bear in the tide.
Leaving behind nights of terror and fear,
I rise.
Into a daybreak that's wondrously clear.
I rise.
Bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave me, I am the dream and the hope of the slaves.
I rise.
I rise.
I rise.